Every morning, Emily left her small apartment before dawn, carefully tying the laces of her worn-out sneakers and clutching her little backpack tightly. She lived in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town, where the streets were often empty. At this hour, as the sky slowly shifted from dark to pale gray, Emily began her usual walk to the nearby elementary school, a journey she had made countless times before, but one that felt heavier lately. On one particularly overcast Tuesday morning, as Emily stepped out onto the sidewalk, she noticed something unusual. A dog, scruffy, golden-furred, with tired but intelligent eyes, stood a few feet behind her. He didn't bark or run up excitedly like a typical stray. Instead, he simply watched her, his tail low but wagging slowly, as if he was unsure whether to approach. Emily paused for a moment. The dog didn't seem threatening, just quiet and calm. She bent down slowly and held out her hand, but he didn't move closer. Then, as if deciding she was trustworthy, the dog trotted forward and fell into step beside her. For the rest of the walk, the dog followed silently, keeping pace without a leash or a word. When Emily reached the school gates, the dog stopped and sat down patiently beside her. No other students noticed the new arrival. Everyone was rushing inside, focused on the day ahead. But for Emily, this silent companion felt like a small comfort in a world that sometimes seemed too big and confusing. The next morning, the dog was there again. Same spot, same quiet vigilance. Over the next few days, the pattern became undeniable. The golden dog waited for Emily at the corner of Maple Street, walking beside her to school and sitting outside the gates until the final bell rang. Teachers began to notice the dog too. Some found him scruffy and a little intimidating, worried he might chase the students or cause trouble. The janitor tried shooing him away, but the dog never left for long, always returning by the next morning. He seemed to be on a mission centered entirely on Emily. Principal Harrow was the first school official to truly take notice. Sitting in his office one morning, he watched from the window as the dog calmly accompanied Emily through the crowds of students. He wondered where the dog had come from and why it seemed so attached to just one little girl. There was something different about this dog's demeanor, something purposeful and watchful. One afternoon, after school had ended and the hallways emptied, Principal Harrow called Emily into his office. He asked gently about the dog everyone had been talking about. Emily's eyes flickered with surprise, but then she quietly nodded. "His name is Shadow," she said softly. "He started following me a few weeks ago." She paused, glancing out the window where Shadow lay curled up on the grass. "I don't know where he came from, but he's not just any dog." Principal Harrow leaned forward, curious. "What do you mean?" Emily shrugged, her voice barely above a whisper. "He listens to me. When I'm scared crossing the street, he stays close. When there's loud noises, he stays calm beside me. I think he knows I need him." The principal studied her for a moment. This was no ordinary stray. He could see it in the dog's steady gaze, in the way Shadow always positioned himself between Emily and anything that might be dangerous. Determined to understand more, Principal Harrow made a mental note to find out where the dog came from, and how he had come to be Emily's silent protector. Outside, Shadow lifted his head and watched the school with alert eyes. He was waiting for Emily. And no one knew why. The days grew colder as autumn settled over the small town, but the golden dog never wavered. Rain or shine, frost or wind, he was always there waiting, watching, silent but present. Teachers began, too, whisper among themselves about the mystery dog who shadowed Emily like a loyal guardian. Some worried he might be dangerous. Others thought maybe he was just a friendly stray. But no one could deny the strange bond between Emily and the dog. One dreary Thursday morning, A heavy rain soaked the streets, turning puddles into miniature lakes. Most of the students hurried through the school gates, umbrellas in hand, but Shadow stayed outside, sitting firmly on the wet grass. His golden coat was damp and matted, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Emily, clutching her soaked backpack, spotted him immediately. Her face lit up with relief as she approached, and Shadow wagged his tail, though the wetness made it droop. The dog followed her closely inside the schoolyard, but when the security guard gently tried to usher him out, Shadow calmly sat his ground and refused to budge. The guard radioed Principal Harrow, who arrived quickly. Standing beside the dripping dog, Harrow frowned and shook his head. "He's stubborn," he muttered. "Not your average stray." He knelt to Shadow's level and spoke softly, but the dog's focus never left Emily. Some teachers suggested calling animal control to remove the dog for everyone's safety, but the principal hesitated. There was something about Shadow's behavior that didn't fit the usual pattern of stray dogs. Shadow didn't bark or growl. He didn't chase students or cause a fuss. Instead, he was calm, alert, and protective. The principal decided to observe Shadow for a few more days before making any decisions. He set up a small camera by the school gate, hoping to capture the dog's behavior and any clues about his origins. The footage showed Shadow following Emily as always, never leaving her side. Outside, Shadow's devotion was clear. He didn't interact with other students, and when other dogs approached, he growled softly, but only when Emily seemed uneasy. It was clear he was guarding her in a way no one else could. Meanwhile, Emily remained quiet about the dog. At school, she rarely spoke, but with Shadow nearby, she seemed calmer. A few students tried to approach her and the dog, but Shadow's protective stance was unmistakable. He would nudge Emily away gently if strangers came too close, and she would smile faintly in gratitude. One afternoon, as Emily waited for the final bell, a group of boys tried to tease her. They laughed and called out, but Shadow rose quickly, positioning himself between Emily and the bullies. The boys backed off, sensing the dog's warning. Emily looked up, eyes wide with a mix of fear and relief. Shadow had defended her silently, without barking or biting, just standing firm. Principal Harrow learned of the incident and felt a new respect for the dog's discipline. He knew that Shadow was trained somehow, but by whom? And why was he so loyal to Emily? Curiosity gnawed at him, pushing him to dig deeper. He asked around town, checking shelters and animal control records. No one had claimed a dog matching Shadow's description recently. No microchip or tag was found when the local vet scanned him. The mystery only deepened. Back at school, Shadow remained Emily's quiet shadow. Every morning, he appeared at the corner of Maple Street and walked with her to school. Every afternoon, he waited patiently until she was safely on her way home. One rainy evening, as Emily crossed the street, a speeding car suddenly came around the corner. Without hesitation, Shadow sprang forward, barking loudly and standing between the vehicle and Emily. The driver slammed the brakes just in time, stopping inches away from the girl. Emily froze, heart pounding, but Shadow stayed calm, tail wagging, gently as if to say, "You're safe now." The driver stepped out, eyes wide in shock, and praised the dog's quick reflexes. News of the incident spread quickly, and the school community began to see Shadow as more than a stray. He was a protector, a guardian, a silent hero. But the question still remained, who had trained this remarkable dog? And why did he choose to follow Emily? As the leaves fell and the days grew shorter, Principal Harrow made a plan to visit Emily's home. He hoped to find answers there, answers that might explain Shadow's mysterious loyalty. Little did he know that truth would change everything. The sun poured weakly through the classroom windows as Emily sat quietly at her desk, her eyes occasionally darting toward the door where Shadow would usually wait outside. She rarely spoke to other children, preferring to keep to herself. But the dog's presence seemed to give her a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. One afternoon, after lessons had ended and the last students had shuffled out of the room, Emily's teacher, Mrs. Lawson, approached her gently. She had noticed the dog's loyalty and Emily's growing confidence, but the girl's silence about Shadow made her curious. "Emily," Mrs. Lawson said softly, "can I ask you something? About the dog you call Shadow?" Emily's fingers twisted nervously around the hem of her shirt. She looked down and nodded slightly. "I don't want to upset you," Mrs. Lawson added, "but why do you think he stays with you every day?" Emily hesitated, then whispered, "He's not just a dog. He listens to me. When I'm scared crossing the street, he stops me. When there's loud noises, he stays calm beside me. He watches over me. Double quotes. Mrs. Lawson smiled warmly. "That sounds like a very special dog. Has he always been with you?" Emily's eyes filled with a quiet sadness. "No, he just showed up a few weeks ago, right after my birthday." Mrs. Lawson gently probed, "Do you remember where he came from?" Emily shook her head slowly. "No one knows. I didn't want to tell anyone because I thought he might go away if people found out." Mrs. Lawson understood. She had seen many children build bonds with animals in secret, feeling safer with their silent companions. But something about Shadow's behavior was different. He wasn't just comforting Emily. He was protecting her in ways that seemed almost purposeful. Over the next few days, Mrs. Lawson kept an eye on Emily and Shadow. She noticed how the dog reacted to different situations, how he sat close during loud fire drills, how he nudged Emily away from crowded hallways, and how he stayed calm even when other dogs barked aggressively nearby. One morning, Mrs. Lawson arranged a quiet meeting with Principal Harrow to share what she had learned. "Emily's dog is more than just a stray," Mrs. Lawson explained. "He's trained. He knows what to do. I think he's protecting her." Principal Harrow nodded slowly. "I've seen it myself. Shadow watches her like a guardian. But who trained him? And why?" Determined to find answers, Harrow decided to speak directly with Emily's mother, Maria. He arranged a visit for the weekend, hoping Maria could shed some light on the mystery. When Harrow arrived at Emily's modest apartment, Maria greeted him with a tired smile. She was a hard-working woman who juggled 2 jobs to support her daughter. The walls were decorated with family photos, many showing a man in uniform, a soldier with a kind face. Emily's father was in the military, Maria said quietly, as if trying to prepare Harrow for something. He worked with dogs, a K9 handler. When he was deployed, he trained one dog especially. That dog was Shadow. Harrow's eyes widened. "But Shadow is here, with Emily," Maria nodded. "After my husband died in service, Shadow was supposed to be reassigned. But he disappeared. We thought we lost him. I never imagined he would find Emily." Emily's mother's voice trembled as she continued. "My husband wanted Shadow to watch over Emily if anything happened to him. I think Shadow remembered. He found his way back." Harboring a new respect for the dog, Harrow thanked Maria and left, his mind racing. He realized the story was more than just about a stray dog. It was about loyalty, love, and a promise kept beyond death. Back at school, Harrow decided it was time to share the truth with staff and students. But he knew Emily's feelings had to come first. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was family. And Emily's quiet secret was finally ready to be told. After his visit to Emily's home, Principal Harrow felt a new sense of purpose. The story Maria shared was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Shadow wasn't just any stray. He was a trained service dog, a living link to Emily's father's final wish. Back at school, Harrow decided to observe Shadow more closely. One crisp morning, he waited by the school gate before classes began. The air was cool and smelled faintly of fallen leaves. As Emily approached, Shadow appeared from his usual spot and quietly settled beside her. Harrow knelt a few feet away and called softly, "Shadow." The dog's ears twitched, but he didn't move toward Harrow. Instead, he shifted his position, placing himself directly between the principal and Emily, a silent but unmistakable barrier. Harrow studied the dog's calm but firm stance. Shadow wasn't aggressive, but he was protective. It was clear the dog's loyalty wasn't casual. It was trained, instinctual. Curious, Harrow pulled out a small packet of dog treats from his pocket and held it out. Shadow eyed the treats, but didn't approach. Instead, he looked up at Emily, as if waiting for permission. Emily gave a small nod, and Shadow cautiously took a treat from Harrow's hand, his tail wagging softly. Harrow smiled. "Good boy, Shadow," he said quietly. "That afternoon, Harrow." Invited the school nurse, Mrs. Jensen, and the janitor, Mr. Lee, to meet Shadow. He wanted to ensure everyone understood the dog's importance and how to handle him respectfully. As they gathered, Harrow shared what he had learned about Shadow's history. The staff listened intently, many expressing surprise and sympathy. They agreed to keep an eye on Shadow and Emily, but to let the dog stay close during school hours. Over the next few days, Shadow's behavior continued to fascinate everyone. He was always alert, but never disruptive. When loud noises startled other dogs in the neighborhood, Shadow remained steady, calmly watching over Emily. One afternoon, during recess, a group of students approached Emily. They were curious about Shadow, but unsure how to interact with a dog that clearly had a serious role. Shadow sat quietly, watching. When one boy reached out too quickly, Shadow gently moved back, reminding the children to respect his space. Emily smiled faintly, grateful for Shadow's quiet support. Meanwhile, Harrow decided to investigate further. He contacted local military units to check records about the dog and Emily's late father. The response confirmed that Shadow was indeed a retired military dog, specially trained for protection and companionship. The discovery deepened Harrow's respect for the dog and his mission. One morning, as Harrow walked Shadow near the school entrance, he noticed how the dog scanned the surroundings carefully. Shadow stopped suddenly, ears perked, and his body tensed slightly. Harrow followed his gaze to a group of unfamiliar teenagers approaching the school. They were loud and boisterous, clearly up to no good. Shadow positioned himself between Emily and the group, his posture firm but calm. The teenagers slowed, sensing the dog's presence, and eventually turned away. Emily watched, wide-eyed, then hugged Shadow tightly. The dog licked her cheek gently in return. That evening, Harrow made a decision. He would arrange for Shadow to receive a proper health check and begin the process to officially recognize him as part of the school community. Shadow wasn't just a stray anymore. He was a guardian, a symbol of loyalty and love, and Principal Harrow knew his discovery was only the beginning. After days of observing Shadow and learning about his past, Principal Harrow felt there was more to uncover. He had heard bits and pieces from Emily's mother, Maria, but wanted to see the world Emily lived in the place where Shadow had chosen to return. One chilly Saturday afternoon, Harrow rang the doorbell at the small apartment where Emily and her mother lived. The door opened slowly, and Maria greeted him with a tired but welcoming smile. Inside, the apartment was simple but filled with warmth. Pictures of Emily and her late father adorned the walls, along with a few dog toys and a worn collar that clearly belonged to Shadow. Maria invited Harrow in and offered tea. They sat together in the cozy living room, where sunlight streamed softly through the curtains. "I want to thank you for caring about Emily and Shadow," Maria began. "It hasn't been easy since her father passed. Harrow nodded. I can only imagine. A shadow. He's remarkable. How did he find Emily after all this time? Maria sighed. That's what we've been trying to understand. Shadow disappeared from the base after my husband's funeral. We thought we'd lost him forever. But somehow, he found his way back to us. She reached over to the mantel and picked up a framed photo of Emily's father in uniform. He was a K-9 handler, worked closely with Shadow. Before he deployed, he trained Shadow to protect Emily if anything ever happened to him. It was his last wish. Harrow looked at the photo, feeling the weight of the story. And Shadow remembered. He came back to keep his promise. Maria nodded, eyes glistening. Emily hasn't talked much about her father since he died, but Shadow helped her feel safe again. At that moment, Emily entered the room quietly, her gaze flickering between Harrow and her mother. She clutched a small stuffed animal tightly. Harrow smiled gently. Emily, I've heard wonderful things about you and Shadow. He's a very special dog. Emily looked down but smiled faintly. He helps me. Maria explained how Emily's father had taught Shadow commands and ways to protect Emily, from simple things like guiding her safely across streets to more serious dangers. Shadow wasn't just a pet. He was a trained protector. Harrow asked about Shadow's health, worried about how he had managed without care. Maria shrugged. He's tough, but he needs help. We couldn't afford a vet after everything. I'll take care of that, Harrow promised. Shadow will get the care he needs. Before leaving, Harrow took a moment to talk privately with Maria. Have you thought about letting Shadow officially stay at the school? He's more than welcome there, and I want to make sure Emily feels safe every day. Maria smiled gratefully. That would mean so much. As Harrow stepped outside, he felt a renewed sense of responsibility. This was no longer just about a stray dog. It was about honoring a father's legacy and protecting a young girl who had already endured so much. He knew the journey ahead would bring challenges, but also hoped that Shadow had returned for a reason. And now, with Principal Harrow's support, Emily's family was ready to embrace the future. The following week, Principal Harrow arranged for Shadow to receive a thorough checkup at the local veterinary clinic. The vet, Dr. Simmons, was surprised when she saw the dog's calm demeanor and alert eyes. This dog's clearly been trained, Dr. Simmons said, examining Shadow carefully. His behavior is unusual for a stray, and given his age and coat, it looks like he's been through a lot. She cleaned Shadow's wounds, treated some minor infections, and gave him a much-needed bath. Shadow seemed to relax for the first time in weeks, leaning into the gentle touch of the vet. Harrow watched quietly, impressed by the dog's patience. He made a mental note to ask the school board about officially allowing Shadow to stay on school grounds, considering his unique role. Meanwhile, Emily seemed to bloom with Shadow by her side. The quiet little girl who once kept her head down began speaking more in class and even laughed softly during recess. One afternoon, Emily shared with Mrs. Lawson a story she had never told anyone. My dad always said Shadow was his last gift to me, she whispered. Before he left, he spent months training Shadow not just to be a soldier dog, but to be my protector. Emily paused, her eyes misting. He wanted me to have someone who would never leave me, even if he couldn't be here. Mrs. Lawson nodded, understanding the depth of those words. Principal Harrow continued to learn more about Emily's father, a dedicated man who had served with honor and love. The community's respect for him grew, especially after the story of Shadow's return became known. Local veterans even reached out to offer support for Emily and her mother. Donations poured in to help with rent, groceries, and vet bills. Shadow became more than a stray dog. He was a symbol of unwavering loyalty and a living tribute to a father's love. One chilly evening, Emily sat on the porch steps with Shadow lying quietly beside her. She stroked his golden fur and whispered, "Thank you for keeping your promise." Shadow lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting hers, as if understanding every word. The bond between them was unbreakable, a silent promise sealed by years of training, sacrifice, and love. At school, Principal Harrow officially welcomed Shadow as part of the school family. A small plaque was placed near the gate, honoring Shadow's courage and dedication. Shadow wasn't just a dog who followed a little girl anymore. He was her guardian, her friend, her father's last gift. And together, they faced each day stronger than before. Word of Shadow's incredible story spread quickly beyond the small school and quiet town. A local newspaper ran a heartfelt article titled, "The Loyal Guardian: How a Stray Dog Found His Way Back to a Little Girl." The article described Shadow's silent dedication to Emily, the late father's special bond with his dog, and the promise that had been kept through years of separation. Reporters soon arrived at the school, hoping to capture a glimpse of the dog who had become a community hero. Cameras clicked as Shadow calmly sat by Emily's side during recess. Emily's shy smile and the dog's gentle eyes touched the hearts of many who read the story. Veterans and dog trainers reached out to Principal Harrow and Emily's mother, offering support and assistance. One retired canine handler even volunteered to help train Shadow further and ensure his well-being. Donations poured in, not only for Shadow's veterinary care, but also to help Emily's family with bills and school supplies. The town rallied around them in a way that warmed Maria's heart, reminding her that even in hardship, kindness could be found at school. Shadow was given a special spot near the playground with a cozy shelter built by the janitor, Mr. Lee, who crafted it carefully from leftover wood. The students respected Shadow's space, learning when to approach and when to give him quiet time. Teachers incorporated Shadow's story into lessons about loyalty, courage, and community. Emily, once quiet and withdrawn, began to participate more actively. She shared her experience during class, talking about her father and the dog who had become her protector. One afternoon, during a school assembly, Principal Harrow invited Emily to the stage. With Shadow sitting patiently at her side, she spoke, in a clear, steady voice about the bond she shared with her dog and the love that had brought him back to her. Her words moved many to tears. Parents whispered among themselves, impressed by the bravery of both Emily and Shadow. Shadow, once thought to be a mere stray, had become a symbol of hope and resilience for the entire community. Even the students who had once been skeptical now treated Shadow with respect, understanding that he was more than a dog, he was family. At night, after the school day ended, Shadow would still walk Emily safely home, always alert, always watching. For Emily, the dog's return meant more than safety. It meant healing from the pain of loss and a renewed sense of belonging. For the town, Shadow's story was a reminder that sometimes love and loyalty come in the quietest, most unexpected forms. As the seasons changed and the leaves turned golden, Shadow's place in the school and community was secure. But even with all the attention, Shadow remained humble, his focus never wavering from Emily. He was her silent guardian, her best friend, and the living proof that promises kept even beyond death can change lives forever. The school year was drawing to a close, and with it came a special ceremony that Principal Harrow had been quietly planning for weeks. The entire community gathered in the school's courtyard, where sunlight filtered through the branches of the old oak tree near the playground. It was a day to celebrate not only academic achievement, but also the incredible story of loyalty, love, and protection that had touched everyone's hearts. Shadow sat calmly at Emily's feet, his golden fur gleaming in the warm light. Around him was a small plaque mounted on a wooden post, engraved with the words, "Shadow, guardian of Emily, protector of hearts. The plaque had been crafted by the janitor, Mr. Lai, and painted carefully by a group of students. Principal Harrow stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "Today we honor more than just a dog," he said, voice steady and full of emotion. "We honor a promise kept, a bond unbroken, and the quiet courage of one who watches over us all. Shadow is a reminder that love never fades, and protection knows no boundaries." Emily's mother, Maria, stood beside her daughter, holding back tears. Emily herself looked brighter and more confident than she had months before. With Shadow beside her, she had found a new sense of strength. As Harrow finished speaking, Emily was invited to say a few words. She stepped up shyly, Shadow wagging his tail in quiet support. "I want to thank Shadow," Emily said softly. "He's not just my dog. He's my protector, my friend, and my dad's last gift to me. I know he's watching out for me every day, and that makes me feel safe." A hush fell over the crowd, the depth of her words resonating deeply with everyone present. After the ceremony, the school officially designated a special space near the playground for Shadow. It was a small garden, shaded by trees, with a comfortable doghouse painted bright blue and filled with soft blankets. Shadow took to it immediately, resting peacefully in his new home, where he could keep an eye on the children and the school grounds. Emily often sat nearby, drawing pictures of Shadow and her father, stories unfolding in her sketches that she shared with her art teacher. Her world, once so quiet and lonely, had opened up with new friendships and laughter. The bond between Emily and Shadow remained unbreakable. Every morning, they walked to school side by side. Every afternoon, Shadow waited patiently until Emily was safely on her way home. The story of a stray dog who found his way back to protect the little girl he loved had become a legend in their town. Shadow's loyalty was a gift not just to Emily, but to everyone who had watched their story unfold. And for Emily, the quiet girl who once walked alone, Shadow was the living proof that love, loyalty, and family could never be lost. As the sun set over the schoolyard, Shadow lay beside Emily, his eyes watching over her as he had done every day. He was no longer astray. He was home.